For over 15 years, a thread of quiet familiarity had bound my life to Dylan's. A thread woven from shared moments, distant whispers, and an unspoken understanding that time and space could never quite sever. It began in the bustling streets of Chicago, where we first met as young dreamers at an art exhibit, both seeking solace in the chaos of our lives. Back then, the bond was casual yet significant, a promise of friendship nurtured through sporadic letters and infrequent visits. As seasons turned into years, our encounters became rare but meaningful. A chance conversation in a crowded airport lounge, an unexpected message on a rainy afternoon, or even a silent nod exchanged across the room during a mutual friends gathering. I remember one particular encounter vividly. A winter evening when the city was cloaked in frost and neon lights, and our conversation effortlessly meandered through memories of youth, regrets of missed opportunities, and tentative hopes for the future. Each word he spoke seemed imbued with a sincerity that transcended the mere exchange of pleasantries. It was as though we were both revisiting a shared past that, despite the gaps in time, felt as though it had been crafted in a single, unbroken moment. That evening, in the gentle hum of distant traffic and the soft glow of street lamps, I realized that our connection was not merely a product of circumstance. It was something rare, something that defied the ordinary cadence of everyday life. Dylan, with his calm demeanor and thoughtful eyes, always had a way of making the ordinary seem profound. His life in Chicago, marked by its own tapestry of struggles and small victories, often intersected with mine in ways that felt almost fated. We exchanged news sparingly over the years, a brief email here, a congratulatory text there, each message a reminder of a friendship that had weathered the storms of change. Yet, despite the passage of time, a peculiar kind of intimacy lingered beneath the surface. It was a connection built not on proximity or frequent contact, but on an enduring recognition of one another's essence. It was during one of those long, introspective evenings that I began to reflect on the nature of our bond. I sat by my window, watching the city breathe under the quiet hum of midnight, and recalled the first time Dylan had introduced me to the idea of art as a language of the soul. His words, filled with an earnest passion, had planted a seed within me, a belief that beauty could be found even in the most fleeting moments of life. That seed had grown into a quiet garden of memories, where every recollection, every shared joke or heartfelt comment was a blossom in its own right. As I delved deeper into these reflections, I wondered if the seemingly formal gestures of our past communications were ever a mask for something more profound. Had we both been hesitant to acknowledge a deeper truth out of respect for the simplicity of friendship? In the silent dialogue of my mind, the answer was as elusive as the shifting patterns of light on a rippling lake. I was left with a gentle but insistent urge to understand what lay beneath, the true nature of the connection that had sustained us for so long. Little did I know that this reflection was only the prelude to a series of events that would challenge every notion I held about loyalty, desire, and the delicate balance between what is expected and what is truly felt. That summer brought a gentle upheaval into the predictable cadence of my days. Almost without warning, Dylan's messages began to flow in with a frequency that was as startling as it was sincere. Each morning, as I sipped my coffee while gazing out at the soft glow of dawn, I found a new note from him waiting. A collection of thoughts that seemed to bridge the gap between distant recollection and urgent presence. His words, once sparse and measured, now carried an intensity that blurred the boundaries of our long-held formality. In these messages, Dylan spoke of changes in his life, subtle shifts that had redefined his inner landscape. He described the evolution of his marriage with Olivia in a manner that was both candid and unexpected. The traditional trappings of their union had given way to a fresh arrangement, one that reconfigured the terms of companionship and commitment. There was a delicate honesty in his confession. He admitted that for a long time, beneath the veneer of friendship, a special affection had quietly taken root. His revelations were not delivered with the force of a dramatic confession, but rather as a gentle unveiling of a truth that had simmered beneath the surface of their interactions. Reading his words, I felt a stirring of emotions that I had long thought were dormant. The sincerity in his tone was palpable, and it carried with it a promise of possibility. Yet it also posed an unspoken challenge to the foundations of everything I had believed about loyalty and personal conviction. The nature of his feelings, so different from the platonic warmth that had characterized our relationship for so many years, prompted me to reconsider the quiet spaces in my own heart. I found myself oscillating between gratitude for our enduring connection and a cautious reservation born of years spent building a life around steadfast principles. Dylan's daily messages were more than mere updates. They were subtle invitations to explore the contours of a bond that had never fully revealed its depth. In the gentle progression of his texts, I sensed a shift, a movement from the comfortable terrain of friendship into a realm where unspoken possibilities lingered. Each message arrived like a small beacon, a reminder of the vibrant past we shared and the potentially transformative future that lay just beyond the horizon. Yet, with every new note, there also came an unmistakable hint of complication, a sign that the clarity of our previous exchanges was giving way to a more ambiguous terrain. The underlying cadence of his words carried an earnestness that could not be dismissed. It was as though he was reaching out not just with the need for reconnection, but with a longing to redefine the parameters of our relationship. I read his messages in the quiet solitude of my evenings, each one leaving a residue of thought that lingered well into the night. I realized that while his confession stirred a part of me that had quietly hoped for something more, it also forced me to confront the immutable values I held dear. The affection that had taken root in him was now a delicate puzzle, one whose pieces promised both warmth and the inevitable risk of disruption. In the days that followed, I found myself caught in a silent dialogue, a conversation held within, where the echoes of our shared past clashed with the evolving present. The words on my screen were gentle yet insistent, beckoning me to acknowledge a possibility that defied conventional expectations. And as I navigated the delicate balance of my own emotions, I couldn't help but wonder, was this unexpected turn the harbinger of a new chapter, or simply a fleeting anomaly in the tapestry of our long-established connection? In the quiet aftermath of Dylan's impassioned revelations, I found myself at a crossroads, a delicate balance between the pull of an old connection and the steadfastness of the values I had long held dear. Every message he sent was a stirring reminder of a time when our friendship was a sanctuary, unburdened by the complexities of romantic expectations. Yet, the shifting tone of his communications had forced me to confront an inner truth. The integrity of my own beliefs could not be compromised, no matter how compelling the past might seem. I spent several evenings in deep reflection, sitting by my desk with only the soft glow of a desk lamp and the occasional whisper of wind outside for company. The memories of our early encounters mingled with the vivid clarity of the present. I recalled our first conversations in a small, crowded gallery in Chicago, where words flowed freely, unconstrained by the weight of romantic implications. Back then, our bond was built on mutual respect, shared curiosities, and an unspoken promise to always remain true to who we were. That promise had guided me through years of change and growth. But now, faced with Dylan's unexpected emotional openness, I felt the stirrings of a sentiment that could upend my carefully constructed life. His confession was tender yet profound, a gentle appeal to a deeper connection that could blur the boundaries of friendship and loyalty. In every sentence, there was a latent invitation to explore uncharted territories of the heart. And though his words resonated with a familiar warmth, I knew that accepting such an invitation might lead me away from the core of my own identity. The risk was not merely of altering the dynamics of a long-held friendship, it was the possibility of betraying the principles I had vowed to honor, principles forged through years of introspection and hard-won experiences. I resolved that I could not allow the allure of his affection to cloud my judgment. My heart, tempered by years of self-discovery, whispered that staying true to my convictions was paramount, even if it meant watching the potential of something more pass by like a beautiful but transient mirage. The clarity of my decision did not come easily. It was forged in the quiet solitude of many thoughtful nights, each filled with a meditative silence that allowed my inner voice to speak unmistakably. I had to preserve the sanctity of my beliefs, to ensure that every relationship in my life, no matter how significant, remained rooted in authenticity and mutual respect. With a calm resolve, I crafted a response to Dylan, a message that was both tender and firm. I expressed my gratitude for his honesty, acknowledging the depth of his feelings, but also clarifying that the path I was on was defined by a commitment to unwavering loyalty. In choosing to honor my principles, I knew that I might be closing the door on a new chapter in our friendship, yet I could not afford to deviate from the core of who I was. This decision, made in quiet clarity, was a testament to the strength of personal choice, a choice that would continue to shape the narrative of my life, no matter how the future might unfold. Earlier this year, an unexpected opportunity emerged that shifted the steady rhythm of my days. Dylan secured a temporary position in my city, a coincidence that felt almost orchestrated by fate. His arrival promised not only a renewal of our occasional exchanges, but also a chance for face-to-face encounters that had long been limited to memories and fleeting phone calls. It was an invitation to see if our connection, weathered by time and tempered by earlier conversations, could evolve in a context that was both familiar and entirely new. I vividly recall the day we arranged to meet at a small, charming cafe nestled in the heart of the city. The venue, with its warm lighting and art-adorned walls, had always been my sanctuary, a place where ideas sparked and inspiration flowed freely. As I walked in, the soft murmur of conversations and the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee enveloped me, grounding my thoughts in the present. I found a quiet corner table, a perfect vantage point from which to observe the world outside the large windows. There, I awaited a meeting that promised to blend the echoes of our shared past with the immediacy of a renewed encounter. When Dylan arrived, his presence brought an air of gentle familiarity mixed with a subtle shift in dynamics. His expression was calm, yet his eyes hinted at a depth of unspoken words. We greeted each other with a courteous smile, a gesture that, while simple, carried the weight of years of friendship and the anticipation of new beginnings. Over steaming cups of coffee, our conversation flowed as effortlessly as it had during our earlier, more distant interactions. We spoke of our journeys since we last met, the small victories and the quiet struggles that had defined our paths. Every detail, from the delicate clinking of porcelain cups to the soft background notes of an acoustic melody playing overhead, seemed to underscore the significance of this meeting. Throughout our conversation, I could sense Dylan's effort to balance between the past and the present. There was an earnestness in his tone that suggested he was navigating a complex mix of emotions, one that resonated with both nostalgia and the cautious optimism of a fresh start. As we discussed his experiences in the new job and the changes it had brought to his routine, I found myself reflecting on my own journey of growth and transformation. The cafe, with its quiet charm, became a microcosm of our evolving relationship. A space where familiar warmth met the potential for something more profound, yet remained grounded in the authenticity of our shared history. While the encounter was filled with moments of quiet introspection and thoughtful dialogue, it also gently hinted at the promise of unexplored horizons. The meeting was not an abrupt departure from our established rapport, but rather an invitation to reimagine it in a new setting. One where the constraints of the past could be reassessed and where the possibility of genuine understanding lingered in the air. In that softly lit corner of the cafe, I began to realize that change, no matter how subtle, could open up unexpected avenues for personal growth and connection. In the days following our meeting at the cafe, a subtle yet unmistakable air of seduction began to weave its way into our exchanges. Dylan maintained his calm composure, his demeanor imbued with a quiet assurance that belied the complex emotions stirring beneath the surface. Every gesture and every word he uttered carried an undertone, a soft murmur of unspoken possibilities that challenged the boundaries of our well-established friendship. It was as if he had discovered a language of hints and delicate invitations, carefully crafting each sentence to evoke memories of our shared past while hinting at a future that dared to be different. Our conversations, once defined by casual updates and gentle reminiscence, now acquired a nuanced cadence. During our daily exchanges, Dylan would share little details of his day that resonated with an intimacy far beyond the usual scope of our interactions. He recounted the way light played across the city streets at twilight, or how a familiar melody on the radio stirred echoes of old laughter and shared secrets. In these moments, I sensed that his words were meant not just to update me, but to bridge the gap between two realms, the safe harbor of our enduring connection and the alluring unknown of something more profound. On one particular afternoon, as we meandered through a quiet park near my favorite art gallery, the conversation took a turn that was both tender and charged with an undercurrent of something unspoken. Dylan's eyes, reflecting a mix of determination and vulnerability, met mine as he softly mentioned the idea of continuing our encounters in a more personal, albeit discreet, setting. His proposal was wrapped in layers of care and respect, a delicate balance between longing and deference to the commitments each of us had made in our lives. Though his suggestion held the promise of rekindling a closeness that was both emotionally and artistically resonant, I found myself anchored by the clarity of my own convictions. In that moment, surrounded by the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant hum of city life, I felt the weight of my own internal dialogue. Dylan's invitation, wrapped in subtlety and sincerity, stirred a ripple of conflicting emotions within me. There was a certain charm in the prospect of exploring the unexplored, a chance to reconnect with the raw, unvarnished parts of our shared history. Yet, the clarity of my principles and the deep commitment to the values that had always guided my life rendered me resolute. I understood that, however genuine his affections might be, the path he suggested carried with it complexities that could disrupt the careful balance of what I believed was right. I chose then to honor the beauty of our connection without allowing it to morph into something that might compromise the integrity of my beliefs. My response was measured, a gentle, yet unwavering reaffirmation of the boundaries that I held sacred. I acknowledged the allure of his words and the quiet temptation they carried, but I also made it clear that my heart was committed to a path defined by steadfast principles. As we parted ways that day, there was a lingering sense of both relief and wistfulness, as if we had just navigated a delicate dance between two hearts, each aware of the beauty and the potential while respecting the limits that time and circumstance had inscribed upon us. In the silent echoes of our farewell, I recognized that our connection would continue to evolve in ways neither of us could fully predict. The unspoken temptation that lingered between us was a reminder that life often presents us with moments of profound possibility. Moments that call for a careful balance between desire and duty, between the allure of the unknown and the comfort of steadfast truth. A few days after our park conversation, as if destiny had woven a delicate thread through the tapestry of our lives, Dylan reached out with an invitation that carried the promise of renewal. His message was simple, yet imbued with a sincere hope. He proposed that we meet again, this time in a place that had long been a silent witness to my personal reveries, a local art gallery where I often spent my evenings immersed in the creative energy of new exhibits. The suggestion resonated with an unexpected clarity, stirring memories of past dialogues about art, dreams, and the unspoken language of emotions. That evening, the gallery was bathed in the subtle glow of soft lights and the hushed murmurs of fellow art lovers. The space was alive with vibrant colors and innovative installations, each piece a testament to the ever-changing nature of life itself. I arrived with a blend of cautious anticipation and a quiet yearning to reconnect with a part of my past that had always held a special place in my heart. The familiar scent of fresh canvases and the rhythmic footsteps on the polished floor set the stage for what I sensed would be a meaningful encounter. Dylan was already there, standing near an evocative painting that captured a turbulent sky over a serene landscape, a juxtaposition that seemed to mirror the complexities of his own journey. He greeted me with a gentle nod and a reserved smile that hinted at both regret and hope. As we began to walk through the gallery, our conversation took on a new cadence. We spoke of the artist's inspirations, the stories behind the pieces, and slowly our dialogue shifted towards the personal narratives that had defined our lives since we last met in such an intimate setting. Throughout the evening, I noted how Dylan's attention was markedly different. Each remark, each pause, carried the weight of genuine care and an earnest desire to understand the contours of my inner world. His words were thoughtful, and he seemed to be listening with an intensity that suggested he had longed for this moment of honest connection. In the midst of discussions about brushstrokes and color palettes, there emerged subtle references to shared dreams and past memories that we had never fully unpacked. It was as if the gallery had become a sanctuary for the unspoken truths we had both harbored for so long. For a while, the usual boundaries that defined our relationship appeared to blur, replaced by a tentative openness that spoke of second chances. Yet, despite the emerging closeness, I remained anchored by the principles that had guided me through years of introspection. I was aware of the delicate balance required to honor our history while treading carefully on the fragile ground of new beginnings. Dylan's invitation, wrapped in the artful charm of a familiar setting, was both a test and a promise. A test of whether the emotional space between us could evolve without compromising the values I cherished. As the evening drew to a close, the gallery's soft ambiance gave way to the cool whisper of the night. We parted with a quiet understanding, each of us carrying the weight of our shared recollections and the cautious optimism of a renewed connection. That second chance, offered in the quiet sanctuary of art and heartfelt conversation, planted a seed of possibility. A possibility that our enduring bond might one day transcend the boundaries of the past, without ever betraying the core of who we were. The day after our visit to the art gallery, an almost palpable shift in our exchanges signaled that the space between us was evolving into something richer than either of us had anticipated. It began with a quiet invitation, a suggestion to meet at a quaint bookstore tucked away on a cobblestone street, a place that had long been a retreat for seekers of both literature and solace. That morning, as I strolled through the narrow lanes, the charm of faded signboards and the gentle murmur of pedestrians created an atmosphere that felt both nostalgic and brimming with possibility. Inside the bookstore, the scent of old pages mingled with the promise of new stories. Dylan had chosen a corner lined with shelves overflowing with classics, modern narratives, and obscure collections, each title whispering secrets of distant worlds and shared passions. We gravitated toward a secluded table near a stained glass window, where light danced softly on the worn wooden surface, casting patterns that seemed to echo the intricate tapestry of our own intertwined histories. Our conversation that day transcended the casual updates of everyday life. We dove into discussions about the books that had shaped us, exchanging recommendations with an intensity that was almost scholarly. Dylan spoke of his newfound fascination with authors who painted life in strokes of raw honesty and lyrical melancholy, while I recounted tales of literary heroes whose struggles mirrored the complexity of our own lives. Every shared passage, every debated theme served as a conduit to our inner selves, a gateway into the hopes and dreams that had long been hidden beneath the surface of polite conversation. Music soon joined the dialogue, weaving its own narrative between the lines of our literary musings. Dylan revealed how a particular melody had accompanied him during quiet nights of reflection, its notes resonating with memories of times when the world felt both boundless and achingly tender. I, in turn, recounted moments when certain harmonies had provided comfort during periods of solitude, their strains echoing the rhythms of my own heart. It was in these exchanges that I sensed a rare depth, a meeting of minds and souls, where every word was imbued with the unspoken understanding that life, in all its complexity, was meant to be lived with both passion and thoughtfulness. As the hours passed unnoticed, our discussion meandered toward the realm of personal aspirations and the dreams that had quietly guided our journeys. We shared secrets about ambitions long deferred and plans quietly nurtured in the recesses of our hearts. In that warm, book-lined haven, the weight of our past and the promise of our future coalesced into a singular moment of clarity. The connection that had always been present was now unmistakably deepened, transforming into a dialogue not just of minds, but of kindred spirits. With every exchanged glance and every thoughtful pause, I recognized that this was not merely an intellectual meeting. It was a profound communion of hearts, a moment of genuine, unfiltered understanding that left both of us quietly changed. In the wake of our renewed closeness, subtle inconsistencies began to surface, casting a gentle but insistent shadow over the comforting warmth of our shared moments. It started with seemingly trivial details that, when pieced together, formed a mosaic of uncertainties. Dylan's reassurances, once imbued with the quiet conviction of our deep connection, now carried nuances that I found increasingly hard to ignore. He mentioned in passing that Olivia was fully aware of our renewed closeness, Yet not once did I see any sign of her presence during our video calls or in the small reflections of our conversations. The discrepancy between his words and the reality of our interactions created an undercurrent of doubt that I couldn't easily dismiss. One afternoon, while revisiting some of our recent messages, I noticed a recurring theme: references to feelings of constraint within his marriage. Dylan described these moments with an uncharacteristic candor, painting vivid pictures of a life where his personal freedom felt stifled. However, as sincere as his expressions of discontent were, they stood in stark contrast to the calm certainty with which he assured me that Olivia was in on every detail. The more I mulled over these contradictions, the more I felt as if I were witnessing a carefully constructed narrative, one that perhaps masked deeper complexities rather than revealed them. It wasn't long before these discrepancies began to tug at the edges of my resolve. In the quiet solitude of late evenings, when the city's hum faded into reflective silence, I found my thoughts wandering back to those early days when our friendship was a safe harbor, unburdened by hidden agendas or unspoken truths. The purity of our past, marked by honest exchanges and mutual respect, seemed to clash with the emerging ambiguities that now defined our relationship. Every message, every shared memory carried with it the weight of possibilities, both promising and perilous. During one of our recent exchanges, Dylan casually mentioned an incident at home, a misunderstanding that had recently taken root in his family dynamic. His account was sprinkled with details that, on the surface, appeared genuine, yet on closer scrutiny, raised more questions than answers. Was it merely the complexity of domestic life? Or did it hint at deeper fractures in a relationship he had long maintained? The more I considered his words, the more I sensed that his life, much like the art we so admired in our gallery visits, was layered with shades of ambiguity. Each revelation, no matter how seemingly inconsequential, chipped away at the facade of clarity that I had so carefully constructed in my own heart. In these moments of introspection, I felt an increasing need to reassess not only my own feelings, but also the evolving nature of our connection. What began as an earnest attempt to rekindle a long dormant bond was now clouded by uncertainties that demanded attention. The warmth of our shared conversations was tempered by a cautious vigilance, a silent acknowledgement that sometimes even the deepest connections carry with them hidden complications. As the days unfolded, the growing doubts pressed upon me, urging a deeper examination of what truly lay at the core of our relationship. Was this merely the natural evolution of two lives that had intersected so many years ago? Or was it the emergence of truths too complex to fit neatly into the narrative we had both cherished? In the quiet moments before sleep claimed me, I found myself teetering between the allure of rediscovered intimacy and the sobering realization that some mysteries might never fully unravel. In the quiet aftermath of our increasingly contradictory exchanges, I found myself retreating into a deep contemplation, a solitary space where thoughts could gather like autumn leaves in a silent, introspective wind. It was one of those evenings when the usual buzz of the city faded into a gentle murmur, leaving me alone with the weight of my uncertainties. I sat at my desk, the only light a soft glow from a lone lamp, and allowed the steady rhythm of my own breath to anchor me in the present. I began to sift through the mosaic of our recent interactions. Each message from Dylan, every anecdote about his life, and the enigmatic changes within his marriage echoed in my mind like fragments of a half-remembered dream. The contradictions that had once seemed merely like minor discrepancies now loomed large, a reminder that sometimes even the most cherished bonds can harbor complexities that challenge our very understanding of them. I replayed his words, trying to reconcile the calm assurance he exuded with the subtle hints of uncertainty that had crept into his tone. How could one person, who had always been a steady presence in my life, now seem to be caught between worlds? One of familiarity, and another of hidden, perhaps unresolved strife. As the night deepened, so too did my reflections. I questioned whether the allure of our past, so tenderly interwoven with memories of simpler times, was enough to sustain the current reality, tainted by secrets and contradictions. In the solitude of that moment, my mind wandered back to the days when our connection was unburdened by such complications, a time when friendship itself was the highest form of truth. Yet the present was unmistakably different.